So in Brooklyn, tomorrow's the New York primaries. And the New York primaries is a closed primary. And if you're listening tomorrow, then today. Today is the New York primaries. And it is a closed primary. You have to be a Republican to vote for the Republican candidates. You have to be a Democrat to vote for the Democratic candidates. Now, over the last few weeks, you've heard online some, I want to call it murmuring, only because it was small at first, and then it started to pick up speed. And as it started picking up speed, what you heard were people saying, my registration has been changed, or I have been purged. People who have been Democrats for a very long time found themselves no longer Democrats. Some were changed. Their registration was changed to independent. Some had their registration changed to Republican. All in all, you had about 350 cases that were merged together by the Election Justice USA spokesperson Shyla Nelson says she has about 350 cases that have been filed into a lawsuit in federal court today. And as of the airing of today's show, I don't have any other results other than it has been filed. The purpose of the lawsuit is to ensure it's an emergency injunction action with a declaratory judgment basically saying anyone who has been in the past a Democrat or anyone who registered before the deadline as a Democrat, even if they have been purged after the fact, they should be able to vote. And if they have to use a provisional ballot on tomorrow in New York, that provisional ballot must be counted. That's the lawsuit that has been filed. And this is according to Jordan Cheriton, TYT Politics. The video came out earlier this afternoon after work. So that's just part of it, right? Those 350 some odd actual reports of suppression. Started off with about 10 people on Twitter. Then it started off on Facebook, and after a while, you have about 350 cases that are actually put together in a federal lawsuit that it was filed today on behalf of the voters, voter suppression. That's just a tip of the iceberg. According to the Election Commission in New York, where the Republican Party statewide has seen about a 15% increase in registrants, the Democratic Party statewide in New York has seen a decrease. The overwhelming majority of the people who are no longer registered as Democrats that were registered as Democrats was found in Brooklyn, New York, home city of one Bernie Bernard Sanders. 63,000 previously registered Democrats are no longer Democrats in this one city, borough in New York. It represents about a 7% decrease in that one area. Whereas other areas, you saw an increase in the Democratic turnout, but because of this significant Democratic registration, but because of the significant decrease in this one in Brooklyn alone. In Brooklyn, by 63,000 people in Brooklyn. And I know Brooklyn is huge, right? I know they have millions of people in New York spread across New York City. So 63,000 may not be a lot in terms of New York, but that's 7 points. That's enough to sway an election. And more importantly than just the election, those are real people who have been potentially disenfranchised when they try to go and vote tomorrow as Democrats, and they find out that they're no longer registered as Democrats. And this is just story 2. I have like 7 stories tonight. When the straw that you should have seen me once it came across my desk. I can't think of the guy's name now from Lethal Weapon, Danny Glover. Danny Glover wrote a letter response to Paul Krugman, and it was just too much. I'm like, there's too much happening today between Hillary Clinton's FEC filings, between this voter suppression in Brooklyn, between all the stuff on the Republican side, and now this with Paul Krugman playing the identity politics game, all to distract us from a perversion of campaign finance and probably about 100,000 people when you go across all of the counties in New York who have been disenfranchised, purged from the rolls, or had their registration changed so that tomorrow when they try to go vote in the closed primaries, they won't be able to. But thanks to the Election Justice USA, there's a lawsuit that has been filed and an injunction sought so that if they have to file provisionally, those provisional ballots must be counted. And I'm sure many of you have been plugged in like I have. Some of you may have some new updated information. Let me actually, matter of fact, let me log into my team room here, because I'm sure they're sending me articles as we speak with updates. So if you have an update, feel free to send it to me and I will I'll discuss that update on air. But these are the things that are happening, and they want us to worry about how many people how many black people has Bernie Sanders hired. They want us to worry about how many black faces does Bernie Sanders have in his ad in Iowa. They want us to worry about whether or not the protesters, many of whom were women, throwing money at Hillary Clinton was sexist. So the disenfranchised 63,000 people, all in Brooklyn. They're trying to see if it is a systemic failure of analytics tools, of technology rather. They're trying to investigate exactly how this happened, that it all is concentrated in Brooklyn. They're trying to figure it out. But you can't help unless they come to tell us, unless they show us the algorithm that went wrong. You can't help but to think that this is something that was targeted on Bernie Sanders. It's impossible not to draw that conclusion. So it's really going to be up to them. The burden of proof is on them to show what happened so that so many people in one area, the area from which Bernie Sanders was born, are all disenfranchised. And in the injunction, there's two types of plaintiffs. There are those who have been Democrats all their lives, essentially, and a second batch of plaintiffs who are essentially new voters who registered before the deadline. Those new voters have now been purged as well. So this gives legs. This gives legs to the argument about Arizona. This gives legs to everything we saw in Michigan. This gives legs to every complaint across the nation. And I'm sorry, when you tie in the fact that 33 of these states were already lockstep with Hillary Clinton before the primaries even began, they joined with Hillary Clinton in a joint fundraising committee. What do you expect people to do but to draw the natural conclusion